Welcome in Stripping Architecture, where we're gonna teach you how to sketch complex urban phenomena and screw all of that classical architectural drawing. Today, let's try and sketching urban soil based on Gaza case. Let's go. So the first one is city's roots. Our major inspiration for this sketch was Gaza Strip and the underground tunnels. We wanted to put this strange phenomenon in one single piece of paper and to open up new urbanistic perspectives. The main goal of this sketch is to illustrate the human relation between the surface and the underground of one land. It is always quite challenging to sketch something like this. Two different type of environments that are structurally closely related but almost never visually connected. Above soil and below soil. One good way of illustrating this kind of perspective is to sketch a section. However, whenever you are sketching a section, it may look slightly unrealistic, and unless you're an architect or urban designer, it may be quite confusing for the wider public. That's why it is always recommended to sketch a section that looks physically possible. Therefore, we decided to sketch the urban fabric of Gaza, split in half, and we imagined how one half of this territory had been dug out and all it left was the concrete structure of the underground tunnels. As you can see, looking at images that look theoretically plausible but physically impossible help us maintain our creativity in a gray zone between abstract and concrete. Therefore, now when we look at the drawing, we can imagine how the long underground tunnels have collapsed on top of each other. Is it because the supportive soil structure does not exist anymore? Is it because the tunnels are made of flexible material? It doesn't really matter. What it matters is that this illustration is based on a real case, but it helps us to imagine creative and naive scenery, free from assumptions. For example, these tunnels now look like butchered intestines. This may evoke gory feelings and violence. The tunnels also look like spaghetti. This may evoke funny associations, but often a metaphor for complication. But most accurately, when you look at the collapsed tunnels next to the soil, they inevitably look like roots that are exposed due to erosion, evoking feelings of unhealthy future but also persistence. Roots that for whatever cause or reason they have grown, they strive to stand up against the erosion and reflect the persistent need for connection with the land. Finally, these tunnels, good or bad, for sure they reflect the surreal state of the world we're living in. We deeply believe that the roots with the land should be done by literacy, art, culture, food, and not by digging tunnels. And we all have to contribute towards making as better as possible conditions to let this flourish.
Bombed landscape. During the intense bombing of Gaza's civil infrastructure, many innocent civilians have lost their lives and plenty of natural resources have been destroyed as well. There was a case where several missiles hit underground natural water reservoirs that consequently have caused water bursts. While the exhausted local population was traumatized from losing their homes right in front of their eyes after being cut off on the entire population of Gaza by the Israeli government. There were many people who in desperation were just feeling lucky to go and fill up bottles with water. This extraordinary case triggered us to sketch this situation of mixed feeling. How to sketch an urban scenery that at the same time makes you feel joy and sorrow. How to sketch this twisted, complex phenomenon. Well, speaking of water, on a cognitive level, we as humans, we always associate images of water in a positive way. They remind us of rivers, parks, vacations, leisure, fertile soil, and so many other positive thoughts. After all, water resembles life. Whenever you want to evoke feelings of joy, we recommend that you sketch water. But how do we sketch water? Blue, right? We mostly perceive water as blue because usually oceans absorb the rest of the colors better and reflect the blue nuance. If you want to make a simple sketch of water, draw an ambiguous shape and fill it with blue. That will resemble static water. But water can flow too, right? Okay, sketch a thin line with a blue color and you get an association of water. Since we know that flowing water is always cleaner, we decided to start the sketch with vivid streams of water that look refreshing. Waterways, sketched in playful manner with light blue color, are frequently associated with purity. Urban designers love to sketch water elements in design proposals with light blue color because it increases the positive feeling of the client or the user, which increases the selling capacity of the proposal. That's why, on the first sight, this sketch looks like some optimistic conceptual image for a landscape design, where the water is meandering around buildings and monuments. But when you look a bit closer, you will see that the objects that seem to be monuments are actually missiles. Wait, do people celebrate missiles? Are missiles a source of life? On the contrary, missiles always have a bad connotation because they are designed to kill and destroy. The missiles that we see here are in fact strike points, and around them we see chunks of urban fabric that remain after the explosion of a missile. Now you see the other reality. Probably the urban fabric was bigger. By just acknowledging this detail, the sketch immediately gets a negative context. Instead of progress and prosperity, this sketch actually portrayed a moment of desperation and regression. This same image that initially has evoked joyful thoughts of water parks and life is actually a sketch of destruction, and the whole perception is affected by the objects in the middle of the water streams. Are those monuments or bombs? Consequently, this sketch keeps you in a loop. It's very nice, it's evil, it's refreshing, it's depressive. In other words, it's twisted and inspired by real events and reality.
Platform city. And while talking about explosions, did you know that during the outrageous bombing of Gaza, there were many bombs that fell on the ground unexploded? This is a rare case where we have a lot of unexploded bombs deep under the soil of the urban environment. How does one city keep on existing while the soil is contaminated with uncertainty, with ticking bombs? Would you build a house in your town if you know that the earth under you is full of unexploded bombs? Will you be able to live with this temptation? Well, believe it or not, for us it was not hard to imagine that there would be people who still would do it. This drove us to sketch a fictional scenario that will portray a city and its capability to thrive in impossible environments. In order to show this phenomenon, we decided to sketch an item that will reflect resistance, organization, and dedication. For this purpose, we have sketched a giant steel structure with foundations, pillars, and support that looks like the massive infrastructural projects built in the late 19th century when the outlines of the first modern metropolises were being set by building bridges, tunnels, subways, and skyscrapers. However, on this illustration, this massive structure does not resemble a part of the city. In fact, it resembles the city itself. It is a platform, a new artificial space that can allow the new city to expand. And when we look at this fictional sketch, we recognize a lot of illogical features. How would the foundations of the buildings be attached to the platform? How would this kind of platform support so much weight in concentrated points of the pillars? How would this structure be maintained actually? But the fact that we can see unexploded missiles under the platform beats every fictional aspect of this sketch, and it allows us to take an imaginative approach. The irony is that regardless of how fictional and non-realistic this illustration looks, the core inspiration is based on real life scenario. And if you put all the parameters, such as massive destruction of civilian architecture, the sieged character of Gaza, the closed borders, the scarce of resources and human rights, covering the bombs and living on top of them may be one of the possibilities. Unfortunate, but possible.
Sold out. And to relate to the last sketch, due to the conducted domicide at the northern part of Gaza Strip, the southern part is getting overflown by people who are trying to establish some safer life. In other words, currently in the Gaza Strip there is a shift qua population density, and the southern part is experiencing rapid temporary and informal densification, always inspired by the limited resources of this besieged territory. We have imagined an extreme scenario where the southern part continues to densify and grow. But, as you can see, while the other part is vertically expanded with the giving horizontal limits, the northern part of the Gaza Strip is vanishing under the water of the sea. Why? When you look at the image, you notice this extreme contrast between density and void. Is this city growing vertically while using the surrounding soil for construction materials? Or is the city eating up the land by creating more housing? Or is the city doomed and destined for self-destruction by expansion? Whatever it is, we hope that you like this urban exploration via imaginative sketching, and remember well, if you want to explore an urban phenomena, focus on the sketching strategies that we have proposed and not on the sketching style. Very important.